and play. Hello, we're back. Welcome, everybody.
Ask if they can hear us first.
Can you hear us? Please let us know in the chat if you can hear. I'm going to keep talking.
Go on then.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
I'm going to turn this over, see if you can.
I'm going to keep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, excellent. Well, thought we'd begin with that lovely video that Liz made.
We've been banned, haven't we? Banned.
Well, we've been banned, yeah, just to start off with that then, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the background.
Liz is in the background, literally, she's in the Northern Lights at the moment, covered in plasma. But yeah, we were banned for a couple of weeks. One of those typical YouTube things that was, thought we might have said something naughty on sort of Ben's stream that he did with us, but then it actually flagged up one from years ago when we did an arty live stream or something. It seems to be somehow the algorithms, they tend to, for some reason, go back and flag up some meaningless thing from years ago, as if to punish you for something that you've done now. But we know it doesn't make sense apart from the agenda. But yeah, wanted to start with that little video of our trip to Norway and the Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis, because it's about the talks about plasma, and that's what Aurora Borealis is an example of. And it was one of the first, probably the first, I don't know how to describe it, but the first way into thinking to scientifically looking at plasma. Scientists, particularly in Norway, Christian Birkeland is someone I'm going to be referring particularly to this brilliant book by Robert Temple, A New Science of Heaven, which I thoroughly recommend. And he's referring, saying Birkeland was one of his heroes, and he's famous in Norway, but probably not known outside of Norway, 1867 to 1917. But it's quite a common theme through this book. Temple, I heard him on a podcast, described himself more than anything else as a sort of, I think, a scientific historian or something like that. So he goes a lot into the history of the science and goes looking back at scientists over the ages and their discoveries to, if you like, a chronology of where these discoveries were made. But also, I think it's very relevant that he links it all with philosophers and religions from the ancient past, which is what I find particularly fascinating as a layman, and really finding within plasma a scientific basis for so much of the supernatural and spiritual that's been described and people have talked about in Revelation, having their visions, and it's been described in religious texts, supernatural experiences, even UFO experiences. And Robert Temple is saying he thinks that so much of that is really connected to, is an experience of plasma. But yeah, I mean, just there's such a history through the book. So many of these scientists which Temple refers to, and I'm going to go through in the talk about some of them. And it's a recurring theme that so many of them were completely shunned for years, possibly their whole lifetime, and the things that they discovered through their scientific painstaking analysis and years of study and research was ridiculed in many cases and just refused to be accepted by the scientific mainstream. And that's one of these themes that obviously keeps prevailing to the age now, where it's a scientific consensus that the establishment, the powers that shouldn't be, decide for their own agenda is the one that they want to put forward. And this idea, it's a scientific consensus. So many percentage of scientists say that this thing is the thing, and that other thing isn't a thing. And if you say the other thing is a thing, then you're an idiot, you're a heretic, but many of these scientists, often years after their death, certainly years after the discoveries they made and were ridiculed for, ended up being vindicated, and later science, further developments in things like space travel, proved theories that they had which were disputed. And this guy Christian Birkeland was one who, as I say, he was Norwegian and spent countless days, hours, years, months, whatever, out in the waste, studying the aurora borealis. And he came up with a theory, but based on the scientific analysis, that it was caused by streams of charged particles pouring in from the sun towards the Earth's poles, the magnetic poles, and the particles then glow and cause all the beautiful lights. And this theory caused absolute outrage, and astronomers all over the world called him a madman, because the theory, until quite recently, they regarded it as not even a theory, but absolute fact, was that space was empty. It was a vacuum. And so the idea that charged particles could be streaming across space was regarded as being completely ridiculous. So he was called a madman, and it wasn't till decades after his death that there were discoveries made that showed he was totally 100% right. There was a lot of other previous, going back centuries, people that looked at the aurora borealis and came up with theories of it. But as I say, it was the common theories were rejected in idea for this consensus. So I've been left in charge of the controls, but there will be a hand possibly seen, as has already been seen.
Through the plasma?
Yeah, through the plasma, because I am likely to block it. No, it will all be good. So this is a...
So do you want you with the plasma or just the plasma?
We'll have me with the plasma, shall we?
Come on, give it a go.
Oh God.
No, don't remove anything. Yeah, try that. Yeah.
Brilliant. There we go. There's little me next to a ball of plasma. So, as previous viewers to this channel will know, I'm not a scientist, and I am very much a layman when it comes to these things. So I'm not going to get into in-depth science. I'll have to read some bits out. I'm not going to read extensive bits before Liz hits me over the head, because she's in a position behind me.
I'm going to go see Connor in a minute, but you'll be safe.
Oh, right. But you can steam back in if you hear it. But anyway, but just so plasma, it's made up of charged subatomic particles. It's volatile, displays a tendency to form complex, constantly evolving patterns. And this is particularly true discrete bundles of plasma that we call plasmoids, and these can be unbelievably enormous, as we're going to talk about later. But So plasma is essentially made up of two subatomic particles, electrons that have a negative charge and protons that have a positive charge, and ions, which are incomplete atoms, which also have a positive charge. But in whole atoms, there is a balance between the negative and positive. So physical matter is atomic matter. In order to be physical, it has to be made of whole atoms. But that, surprisingly, really, because that's funny. Yeah, again, the prevailing scientific view and social cultural view is of materialism. So that the material predominates. It's what you can see and feel about you, the environment, the world as it's constructed, the physical world, which is primary in our experience. And that's, as I say, the sort of prevailing view has been in science, if you like, that it's all about materialism. And as we know, that sort of comes on into a social context where anything that's thought to be outside of the material, i.e. the spiritual, the supernatural, is regarded as being crazy and idiotic and nonsensical, and we're crazy if we believe in it. But in actual fact, particles only very rarely come together to form whole atoms. So non-atomic plasma is the main constituent of the universe, but not even main as in 55, 70, 80% of the universe. It's more than 99% of the universe. I'm always fascinated by people talking about dark matter and about that being 99% of the universe or whatever. I think DJ might have mentioned it in the comments of a chat a million years ago. But in actual fact, I say in actual fact, I think a lot of people now, certainly Temple was saying that he thinks in actual fact what they're talking about dark matter is actually plasma, but it's invisible. So plasma is like a fourth state of matter, if you like. So it's on our physical world, if you like, we have gas, liquid, and solids, physical matter. Can't remember what the but plasma is something different from those three states. And as Temple was saying, it's it's almost all of the universe is plasma. And as a sort of go into a bit further, it's not only that it's around us in the universe outside of the planet, but it's also within the planet and within all of us. So it's not even that it makes up 99% of the universe that's outside of the physical planets. It's within everything. So Temple says in that case, he sees plasma as being primary in the universe, and everything else, the whole atoms that make up physical matter, is secondary. So to me, as I sort of talk as I go along, but when I was writing my book on the lost child, and I sort of got a bit metaphysical with it in the final couple of chapters, but for me, I was talking about this idea, like you have these ideas of a philosophical idea of nothingness, but not in terms of just a vacuum where something is completely empty, but like a ground of all there is, which is how I sort of thought of it. And everything that is realized, if you like, that is physical is just manifestations from that ground of all that is. So to me, as I going from what Temple's saying, you know, it seems to strike a chord with what I sort of thought on a different level, if you like, a non-scientific level, that there is some universal ground of all there is, and what manifests as physical matter, physical life, comes from that. So, as I say, someone coming from my perspective of being someone who's looking at things from, if you like, the more esoteric or spiritual, supernatural things that were interesting on that side. But I am fascinated when science connects with that. I might have said before, like I was always very, if you like, anti-science and mathematics, possibly because I wasn't very good at it, but I was obviously into literature and things like that. But I sort of took this view, like with Blake, you know, it was the idea of like Newton trying to divide up the world in this mechanical form of science, trying to things like a cogs in an elaborate clock, and just one thing set another thing in motion, and it was all very mechanical. And in some ways, you know, that has carried on into sort of the modern day, and it's still the idea of maybe things being like a machine, whether it's us as human beings, and obviously we know where we're going with that. But you know, the universe as a whole, you know, they talk about things as being a mixture of reactions and but when I was at university and I read a couple of novels, but they were talking about modern scientific views around quantum mechanics and things like that. But then that sort of struck a chord with me, and it seemed, wow, the things that are coming up with here seem like ideas that have come up with religion, spiritual ideas. So then I started to think, well, you know, there's a lot of fascinating things in science, but as a character in one of this novels, Child in Time, which influenced me, there's a physicist character in that book, and she says, oh, I'm looking for we want scientists who can appreciate different interpretations of the world, you know, the kind of interpretations of visionaries, psychics, poets, that sort of thing. And to me, that's the kind of thing that, well, definitely what Robert Temple is trying to achieve in his book, and I think he has achieved it. And he's obviously got I'd probably be familiar to some people. I know he's been on megalithomania conferences, and he's written about the Sphinx, and he's very interested in Egypt, going back to something that we've been discussing in recent times. So he's got a fascination with all these side of things, and ancient mysteries, ancient philosophies and religions, but is also a very hardcore scientist. And as he's talked in the book, you know, he's done scientific papers and also collaborated with and been friends with a lot of these very brilliant scientists over the years. So I guess I always quite like that, because I'm not very scientific, so often I have difficulty going into great detail to try and defend things from a scientific point of view. I try and look up things, especially what's happened in the last few years of nonsense. I try and, especially when people have sort of thrown the sort of conspiracy theorists, they don't look at evidence and they ignore science, you know, those sort of things.
Careful, we'll get kicked off.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm not going to obviously get into words that will be dangerous. It probably will anyway, but I think it's quite nice when scientists with that kind of brain also do have this appreciation. Rupert Sheldrake is another colleague and friend of Robert Temple, and he's someone else that's a very brilliant scientist, but again is seeing how modern scientific ideas can connect with ancient spiritual ideas and things like the supernatural, that kind of thing. So it's good to have someone like that on our side, I think. But just It's always disconcerting when your wife yawns behind you, isn't it, when you're doing it?
I'm reading Lord of the Rings.
Oh, it's Lord of the Rings that's causing her to yawn, not me, obviously. But we're back to the Nordics with the Lord of the Rings as well. But yeah, it all stems back to them. Temple is, you know, he starts off the book. He was saying quite recently there were these clouds, called clouds, but nothing like the clouds we get here, either the natural ones or man-made ones, known as the Kordiluski clouds, in honor of this Polish man that discovered them, I think, in the 60s. But I think he sort of saw a trace of them and then couldn't really find them anymore. So it was sort of they were discovered, but then sort of promptly lost again. But then these Hungarian, I think, astronomers or scientists anyway of some form or another, published a paper that they discovered these clouds. And Temple was struck by it and like got in touch with him, was like, oh, you're going to be studying the plasma in these clouds. And they're like, didn't even really seem to be knowing what he was going on about, and said, oh no, we're not looking at that. So these clouds apparently, like, they're in space between the moon and the earth, and together their combined mass or size, if you like, is 9 times the size of the earth. But they're just formed of this plasma, a whole big complex of these subatomic particles mixed with dust, which is important. But they are an incredibly complex, evolving system. And what Robert Temple is arguing is that these would in themselves be, like, he thinks they're living entities. They are, if you like, they've got all these they're like a giant brain, or he talks where a lot of sort of AI or those sort of quantum computers, a lot of the research that's being done on those. But this idea of all these connecting, you know, billions of them, just obviously the size of these things just so enormous, and potentially, although they're invisible, and as I say, were you know, not seen at all until relatively recently. Excuse me. He's speculating that they would be in existence for like billions of years, and so over this time they could have developed this unbelievable intelligence. He refers actually during the course of the book to this novel which I'm currently reading as well, which, funny enough, someone at work recommended to me, and I bought it a while ago but hadn't read it. Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle, who people probably will be familiar with, but a physicist, and I think he, if I'm right in thinking, he's had a theory that life on Earth came from sort of like a cloud, I guess similar to these Kordiluski clouds, but you know, clouds that maybe move through space and sort of brought the building blocks of life to Earth. But again, you know, his theories have been sort of derided by other scientists. But it was a student of Fred Hoyle who also co-wrote a paper with Robert Temple about plasma within these Kordiluski clouds. So, as Temple was saying, these clouds will be bombarded by charged particles from the sun, and they create these incredibly complex patterns. And these are called the dusty complex plasma. and he's arguing that they may have had a role in forming this planet throughout its long cosmic history. They may have even helped to create organic life. And Temple is arguing that life in its basic state is inorganic. It's not made of atomic matter. It's come from this pre-atomic matter. And he's saying that everything in the universe arises from plasma, and that the organic state is secondary. So that, and he's also saying, as we've gone later, that there's evidence, there's plasma within us that keeps us alive, and potentially is an energy. Our plasma bodies would continue to exist after the physical bodies finish. So what he's saying is, these could all be connections with the spiritual and the supernatural. Just to quote him, he says, these ideas are also in another sense very old. Ancient religions and philosophers in the classical world, including Aristotle, formulated very similar ones. I believe that much of what we have previously called spiritual is really plasma, and it exists all around us and in us. Many spiritual experiences reported throughout human history are really encounters with plasma phenomena or plasma entities. My primary purpose is to reconcile the spiritual with the material and show that the dispute between them is false. So, not to say that, one is the plasma, the spiritual is always within the material, which maybe we sort of knew anyway, maybe, but yeah, I mean, this is a painting, I don't know who by, but Ezekiel from the Bible. We see in this picture it's quite bright lights, and the description of Ezekiel in the Bible, like many other descriptions in ancient texts, it's in the book of Enoch as well, it describes these supposedly celestial beings as being incredibly surrounded by bright light. Temple also talks about the burning bush, which Moses was supposed to have seen, where it's sort of burning, but at the same time it's it's not destroying the bush, so it's some sort of radiance outside of the burning bush. There's one of the Nahamadi texts that were found, these texts that were found, I think is that the Dead Sea Scrolls, but there's the Apocalypse of Adam, talks about radiant bodies in Eden. When descendants of Seth return to earth, they will all become clouds of light. I remember Liz saying she couldn't be bothered with that because there wouldn't be any canapes to eat at a party if you were just a cloud of light.
Boring.
Yeah. So what he's arguing is that he thinks that potentially these spiritual revelations, encounters, supernatural encounters that people have described over the centuries have actually been maybe some sort of manifestation in plasma, whether it might be something that's purely plasma that's come from, well, he talks about these clouds, as I say, as that they're living entities and maybe sort of super intelligent, and he's even suggesting that it's like this could be almost like the God that people have had encounters with over the centuries, and it can send in the form of things like ball lightning, which I'm going to go on to in a moment, but these sort of projections of plasma which appear as bright lights in the sky, Obviously, think now as well of sort of a lot of UFO encounters and that sort of thing. And he's suggesting, although to me it was sort of like maybe taking a bit of a leap, where he was saying, he was sort of assuming this thing these clouds had great intelligence, so they were like they're beings, and he was talking about how it's probably they're monitoring us to see if we how we do as a species and that sort of thing. And I thought, well, that's maybe making a bit of a leap. And I was wondering, I mean, if this was, I say in this novel, The Black Cloud, it's a cloud appears from space and sort of comes between the Earth and the Sun and causes all sorts of disasters. But they then realise that it has got an intelligence. It is an intelligent entity in its own right. So Temple's saying, where we're talking about looking for aliens, looking for extraterrestrial beings, maybe we shouldn't be looking at hard nuts and bolts craft and sort of other sort of creatures like us, but it might well be that it's life out in the universe is in the form of these plasmas, these giant complex plasma clouds, which have a super intelligence. It just struck me in my mind. I think the first Star Trek film, didn't they have? It was something like that. The old Voyager, the original sort of Voyager that was sent off into space to try and make contact with generations. And they sort of find it. It's gone into sort of the outer reaches of space, and some sort of entity has sort of taken it over, and it's become like this part the Voyager craft and part of this entity. It just sort of cropped into my head. But so yeah, but yeah, I would think if and I think he makes a good case. I think that it may well be a fascinating, and it might well be a real thing that there is another form of life in these plasma clouds. But if that was the case, I mean, it would be such a completely different kind of consciousness to ours. The idea of monitoring, seeing how we're doing, if we manage to make it, if we go one way or another. I mean, would a super intelligent plasma billions of years old cloud be interested? I don't know. But then you've got all these arguments that we, as I say, we come from plasma, if you like. So there's a lot of people I know that sort of say that we've come from God, or we've come from this spiritual realm, and it's maybe this is a sort of a testing ground, a university, as Liz has mentioned. So I don't know, maybe it is, we are aspects of this extraterrestrial, supernatural in a way, or super material, but it's not, it's a plasmoid being that's billions of years old, that's gigantic.
Probably just a bloody fish pond in their garden.
Well, effectively we would be, because I say these clouds are like 9 times the size of the Earth, and potentially billions of years older and more intelligent than us, and may have even created us. So yeah, I guess we are going to be a little pond in the garden, really. That's basically what we are, really. But
fucking typical. Why am I on a bloody diet then?
Well, it's not to say that it's,
I'm going to get carbs.
That's no excuse, Liz. But yeah, I mean, just a phrase here that's when I talked about so many scientists that Temple goes through in the book have been derided, and they're brilliant discoveries have not been accepted. You know, but Temple was saying, and as I say, he's someone that is a scientist and associates with lots of scientists, and you know, he said that science has fragmented so much that they don't even know what the people down the hall in the next lab are doing. So again, it's this idea of things being broken up into little divisions, and we see that obviously they've done that with society, and they try and do the dividing off of people into little labels and subsets and keep people separate. But again, it's that idea of breaking things up rather than having a holistic view of things being connected. So you've got areas of science which just focusing on one little thing, and they're not taking any notice of discoveries by another field of science, as he says, might even be literally just down the corridor in the same university, but you know, they could maybe bring their two bits of research together and it would make huge leaps. There is a lot of research now into very fine plasmas because they're used to deposit circuits onto microchips. So there are a lot of people working on these in huge corporations. But as Temple says, there's problems with that because, well, with huge corporations, he doesn't go quite say this, but I mean, he just talks about corporations obviously keeping secrecy because they want to keep anything that they discover for themselves to make money out of it. But, you know, perhaps there's even more to it than that a little bit, because, you know, there's a manipulation side of things with the huge corporations. But also, as he says, so much research that's being done, a lot is in the military security service complex. So obviously that's not made public. So much of the research that's done now and that has been done in the past has not been revealed. So again, you've got this idea of when people say, when it's so, it's all about the science and you know, it's just want to further knowledge and for the good of humanity, but so much of the time, as we know, it's actually really just for the interests of the powerful, the corporations and the military, security, governments. But even despite all this, there was very notable scientists that have studied plasma or aspects of it over the years. You know, Nobel Prize winners, if that's an important thing to you. But there are very respected scientists in their fields that have made discoveries. But again, it's sort of often things that they have discovered concerning plasma has been sort of sidelined, and it's not really in the public view much. I mean, I would say in a way, I was thinking that really when in the past, maybe when I've heard plasma, I don't know, I've sort of thought of it in terms of a you know, where it's something, a state of matter that was referred to in old texts, which it was, but not as being a scientifically proven 99.9% of the universe. And, you know, I still certainly don't think the public at large know anything like the implications of plasma, which is why one of the reasons Temple said he's done the book, to try and put it out there how important it is and how it can change how people view our place in the universe. So I think credited as being the first person, well, in terms of modern science, there have sort of old philosophers as sort of mention a bit in a minute, but that talked about plasma in sort of philosophical ways or spiritual type ways. But there was this guy Sir William Crookes with a nice, impressive moustache.
I like them stuff.
Yeah, I think Liz would like that moustache. Yeah, she wanted me to have a moustache like that. 1832 to 1919, and he talked about radiant matter, as he called it, when he was studying cathode rays of electrons. But this then opened the door to subatomic particles. So he was, I guess, a groundbreaker in his time. And apparently, just to throw in a little cosmic photo of Nikola Tesla here.
My birthday.
Yep, I was going to mention that. It was his birthday. Obviously, he's not around anymore, but it was his birthday on Wednesday. And I discovered that the two geniuses born on that day, because my good lady wife shares the birthday with Mr. Tesla. But he said how William Crookes inspired him to take up his studies and study this field of around electricity and energy and all these sort of things. So Crookes is a really notable figure. But interestingly, Crookes was also in his day, he was fascinated by spiritualism, and he tried to apply scientific techniques to psychical research. So again, he's another one of those scientists, along with Tesla as well, and many others, that were certainly open to spiritual ideas, something psychic or visionary, if you like, or wanting to connect hard science, theoretical science, with something visionary. And they were accepting of both forms of exploration, if you like, or different forms of knowledge. But certainly at this, as I say, late 19th century, that where Crookes was, into the early 20th century, he was fascinated by spiritualism and by this radiant matter, this plasma. So right at early days, you have a connection there. And as I'm just going to mention briefly in a moment, John Dee. I mentioned obviously him in a talk months ago. But so often and throughout for the centuries, there's been huge connections. But great figures in science were also fascinated by the esoteric, supernatural, spiritual, and the two were connected within these people. They didn't think one was divorced from the other. And again, I think that's something that's been, well, that has been lost now, certainly in terms of the science that's pushed out to people in general. But so much of modern science is finding things all the time, and with greater technology, the good side of it, I suppose, is that they were proving things or finding things which is vindicating or seeming to connect with things that were said centuries ago, but maybe people that didn't have the technology where they were able to prove it 100% scientifically. So this is a picture of ball lightning, and this is another example of plasma. And Temple's talking as if, as I was saying, where he was talking about how these clouds can be intelligent and almost watching over us, or they're interacting with us. And excuse me, that these ball lightning could almost be like sort of drones. They were. I know other people have, Liz was saying, where people have talked about how they seem to move with sort of a consciousness, or they don't just seem to be random. Temple describes in his book, you know, examples, ball lightning, where they've entered submarines or aircraft, and they've sort of gone along the floor of the craft. You know, they seem to sort of follow people or be looking at people, or you know, aircraft. So that there does seem to be that they've got a consciousness in themselves, or maybe they are part of a bigger consciousness. And you know, I think Temple sort of suggesting maybe, I suppose, like the idea, I suppose ball lightning is often associated with supernatural and with UFOs, and this idea,
Orbs.
yeah. So again, this idea, I suppose, a lot of people have that with UFOs, that maybe they're being sent by a more intelligent force or beings, and they're observing us, and they're watching what we do. And sort of Temple sort of talked in a very similar language to things that I've heard, where, you know, it's instances where people talk about UFOs going, you know, to nuclear sites, and, you know, where they're nuclear weapons, and that they're concerned about us using these nuclear weapons, and they're monitoring that kind of thing. So Temple sort of refers to these ball lightning experiences as in very similar ways, and of course they could be linked. And you know, I think a lot of people said, you know, sometimes UFO sightings could be something like ball lightning, but there's but also, you know, this ball lightning, it moves in incredible ways. As I say, you know, like it's under conscious control, but also it can pass through walls, things like that, which again connects with where it may be connected to, or confused with, or synonymous with ghosts and those sort of other sort of supernatural encounters that people have had, where again, when they see these sort of strange lights and things pass through walls, that sort of thing. So again, you know, this could all be aspects of plasma. I was going to throw in a photo now from, going to do another photo in a moment, but this is, so I got this from our friend Nick Hayes's Quest for the Invisibles website. We've talked about him before, Nick, with his incredible infrared and ultraviolet camera work, done over years, frame by frame, and I'll show in a moment some of the things that he found with this method. Really brilliant work he's done. Please check out his website on Quest for the Invisibles. But this is something I got from Nick's website, but this is actually a photograph taken by this Italian research group, GRCU, I believe they were known as. So there was a group of Italians that were doing similar work with infrared, ultraviolet, that sort of photography. And I mean, this is really strange. It looks like sort of a child's drawings almost of ducks or something like that. But it's around a ball of, again, a ball of light, ball lightning maybe. But he's got what these look like, these entities. I mean, that, I don't know. I just had a thought, you know, in terms of what we've been talking about, with a consciousness of these things. It's almost like it's sort of like presenting the photographer with some like images, like a child's mobile of some ducks. I don't know. It just striking to me. But again, the GRCU, Trevor Constable, in America, which inspired Nick to do his work, have come out with these incredible photography, which is basically showing what looks to be entities within your plasma, or something which isn't visible to us on our spectrum, normal spectrum of sight. And and doesn't appear to be, it's certainly not matter in our concepts of it, but they seem to be entities in some description made of or moving through the plasma. So just let's go back to that for a bit. So solar winds, the energy we get from the sun, that all is charged particles, it's plasma. And the space between the Earth and the sun is completely filled with solar wind, which is plasma. But prior to 1958, the establishment scientific opinion, as I said earlier, in relation to Birkeland studying Aurora Borealis, the establishment said that outer space is empty and composed solely of vacuum. So they said it was nonsense. There couldn't be particles coming through space from the sun to the Earth because it was just a vacuum and nothing could travel through a vacuum. So in 1958, Van Allen discovered the radiation belts, also made of plasma, that surround the Earth. Now, this, I'm not sure if I was aware of this. It doesn't surprise me, but at the same time, it's quite frightening when I think about it. I think again in this year 1958, the US exploded a 10 megaton atomic bomb in the high atmosphere, 75 kilometers above the Earth, to produce an artificial aurora and study the plasma regions above the planet. Follow-up studies a year later, well, as Temple said, I don't know if they probably not admitted it, but must have done lasting damage to the high atmosphere. Many more followed, about 100. I think not just the US, also the Soviets at that time, they got involved as well. And Temple was saying, in his opinion, what they did with all would have had a lot more bigger effect on climate than, anyway, but I'm not, things I won't mention because it will get us in trouble. But yeah, they exploded atom bombs in the atmosphere, about 100. That might not have been good, don't you think? That might
don't
not
use hairspray.
That might
bad for the environment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's like, blimey.
Recycle your yogurt pot.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that they would do such a thing. I mean, again, it's this idea of, and science can come up with amazing things, as we're talking about, but also this idea. Well, I suppose, especially if it's combined with bloody military and their bombs, there should actually be a little bit of discretion about what they actually do, and not just doing anything in the name of science. And yeah, I mean, surely the damage that, how could it not cause damage? But anyway,
conspiracy theorist.
I'm
trust the science.
I am a dodgy conspiracy theorist.
We might as well just say whatever we want. We've got limited time here.
Well, yeah. Well, we don't actually want to get kicked off before I even finish the live stream.
Remind everybody to thingy you.
Oh yeah. Subscribe to Less Nihilistic Mark, which is my channel, which hasn't got anything on there at the moment, but we've
got one strike there.
If we need to get our act together and download videos before.
You say we need to get our act together?
Well,
you mean I need to get my act together?
We'll do it as a team. What? But you're the technical director.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah. So as I say, that was supposedly in the what was called the Cold War, the Soviets and the Americans competing with who could explode the biggest number of atomic bombs in the atmosphere. But yeah, in '61 there was a Soviet Kamensky Soviet Union scientist who suggested plasma may exist in living organisms. And a scientist, Peter Mitchell, in 1963, I think, British. Again, there's an obituary of him written by Robert Temple, which is included in the book. Came up with his chemiosmotic theory. Energy functions of biological systems are based upon subatomic currents. This became known as vectorial metabolism. So directions in space of energy usage within the body. So again, this idea. So it's not just this that it's this amazing thing that goes all over throughout space, which is mind blowing, but also as above, so below, and in microscopic form, plasma is also within us, and it's these subatomic currents that are part of what keeps us alive as physical beings. In 1986, Hoyuki Ikeze predicted plasma could exist as crystals, could be formed by dust particles in a plasma. 7 years later, he was proved correct. So again, I don't know the fully science, but what, like with these giant clouds between the moon and the Earth, so as I say, they're called dusty complex plasmas. So this dust, as they call it, it's not quite the same as the dust that we get at home. But basically, it's these grains, whether they're what exactly they're made of, but they attract all these electrons to them. They can form these crystals, so these complex patterns, and like if you like, an enormous supersized neural network. So like I say, like a giant brain, or if you like, a supercomputer as well, floating in space, which is just like, you know, a quantum computer 9 times as big as the Earth. So that's where Temple's saying. And also, if you consider that might also be billions of years old, so it could have been, what Temple was saying, it could have been, it would be, have a big enough capacity to store information on everything and everyone that's lived on the Earth ever, and just be, well, an all-seeing, like an all-seeing God, because it would retain all this information. Everything would be, it would have the capacity to store everything in it. But I mean, plasma is also within the inanimate objects as well as animate life. So this to me then is like proof of what, you know, animist, shamanistic people have again believed for centuries, that there's a consciousness or some sort of life within everything, within rocks, within trees, and within the sun and the moon, you know, celestial bodies, if you like. Everything has a consciousness, a life of some sort, and it's all connected. So again, this seems to be something which does very much seem to be providing a scientific basis for so much spiritual, religious, and supernatural concepts that have been around for well, probably as long as we've been, as the human race has been around, and possibly a long time before that. Just as an aside, he doesn't mention it, Temple, but and I haven't looked into it, but I would think Philip Pullman, his Dark Materials must have been, because he talks, that's all about dust as being this connecting thing that again is a sort of like an essence of the universe, and is sort of like a secret to everything. And of course, the series of books is called The Northern Lights, and it's all, you know, certainly the first one is or they go up north, and it's in what would be, you know, Norway or whatever. So I haven't actually looked into whether he's written about it, and but it seems to me that he must have had been influenced by ideas, theories about plasma in his novels. So alongside our atomic visible world is the subtler universe of plasma. And as I say, physical matter is rare. Less than 1% of the whole universe is physical matter. So non-rigid and electrically conducting medium extending to infinity. This is plasma, of course. The remainder of the universe is made up of various plasmas, with the lowest degrees of ionization are the lowest parts of the ionospheres of the Earth and other planets. These regions are really boundary regions between the universal plasma and the small insulating atmospheric shells. So, if you like, where matter is just the pimple on the surface of the plasma, which is just erupted. No, that doesn't sound good at all, does it? Really? I'm not sure. I'll move on from that analogy. So this plasma is sort of like conducting electromagnetic forces. Temple mentions in passing about the electric universe, which is something I've heard people talk about on Richard D. Hall's program, and I guess we'll probably get banned for talking about him. But again, that's talking about everything, the governing force of the universe being electricity and magnetism rather than gravity. So Earth's atmosphere becomes a plasma beginning about 100 kilometers above Earth's surface, the ionosphere, and above that is the magnetosphere. So in theory, nature began with the plasma. So potentially the other three states of matter, gas, then liquid, then matter, a gradual cooling came from the fourth state, which is plasma. Plasma in our everyday life, fluorescent light, gas like neon, becomes plasma when the electricity goes through it. And then when you turn the electricity off, it goes back to being a gas. Plasma TVs, again, when they're turned on, the electricity going through them, they're using plasma. So, sorry, just moving along a bit. Get me notes in order. Hope you're still hanging in there with us. Everyone. Oh. I haven't been able to read the comments. I hope people, I'll probably find out that people stopped hearing me from about 45 minutes ago. Oh dear. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for being here and listening.
Have you finished?
Hello, Rachel. No, I'm still wrapping it on. I just had a moment when I was just scrolling, so I thought I just said, you know, you're suddenly talking, and then suddenly think, is actually anyone listening?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, our bodies are full of plasma, proton currents. The heart is an electromagnetic device. So you've got these different, the complete either end of the scale and everything in between, the most gigantic galactic connections with plasma, but also just at the microscopic level within our bodies. Apologies, everybody, just one moment. So, yeah, just before I move on from, so as I said about ball lightning, and about scientific research often getting trapped, if you like, within military establishments. So a lot of discoveries not finding their way out to the general public or the general scientific world, or certainly not for a long time. There were researchers into ball lightning because they thought that it could be used as a weapon. So there's perhaps still research going on in the West, or there was a lot here and in America during the Cold War and the Soviets as well. And a lot of that research is still secret. They're thinking of ball lightning. I think we did hear someone talking. Was it on Peep Show? Was there a guy talking about spontaneous human combustion?
I did a video about that.
Ah.
No, it was on some other weird thing that I just stumbled across.
One of your weird things.
But I've got a video that I talk about that. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we can find it on the channel while the channel's still.
Find it.
Yeah. But I think
a quick one.
Yeah. But I think he was talking about their chap there said about it might be around where spontaneous human combustion has happened. It's often been around where ley lines are. So again, that can be an energetic thing. So maybe that's something to do with plasma. As you say, we've all got this energy. We are all electrical beings. So we connect to energies around us, obviously. So perhaps, and maybe it's in connection with something like ball lightning, where it can set off these sort of eruptions, and maybe that is connected to plasma as well. So Temple's own theory says is that ball lightnings are charged plasma crystals containing a massive amount of microscopic dust particles which become visible under certain conditions.
Right, so there's a video called Gin, Spontaneous Human Combustion, Aliens, Soulless Teenage... Oh, Christ. I'll see if I can put a link to it in the thing.
We like short titles, short snappy titles.
It's 17. It only got 79 views, but it's called Gin, Spontaneous Human Combustion, Aliens, Soulless Teenagers, 3 question marks. I'll see if I can because I was listening to all this stuff and my brain just went fucking off on one.
Which is good because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
I don't know.
That's what we need more of, brains going off on one.
I'll see if I can share it in the situation.
Right. So again, there's a lot of scientific stuff, although Temple makes it, even for a scientific numbskull like me, quite good, although I do sort of gloss over when he brings in some numbers, but he's got a lot of that, but maybe in footnotes and things, you don't necessarily have to go through that, He talks of a scientist, Kapitsa, in the 1950s, brought in geometry of electric fields, and about this providing energy for the lightning ball, a crystalline structure. Apparently, apart from glass and organic substances like wood, there are very few non-crystalline solids. So, I guess a lot of our people will know about crystals. So again, there's scientific basis, as people will know. Obviously, everyone knows about quartz in quartz watches, and crystals. They can store energy, and of course, so many of the megaliths, old ancient sites, the standing stones, etc., had quartz and other crystals like that within them. So again, you must think that they were aware of, just think of it whether they knew it in these terms, but of plasma, or at least these different energies and the way of manipulating energy between the earth, water, and the sky, and us as people. So plasma crystal positively and negative charged ions and particles form a lattice. Inner structures can store memory, computation, and other faculties of intelligence. And obviously, you see these sort of things used in modern day computing. So again, these brand new scientific technologies, which they are brand new and amazing in many ways, but in different forms. Well, they're in the natural world, or and also ancient peoples as well, in different forms. They knew how to use these things. but yeah, this idea that even the suns, the stars, are all intelligent, and have sort of a consciousness.
That's just the link for that little thing I did about the spontaneous combustion.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, DJ's saying I like quartz and lapis lazuli. Yeah. So there's a new discipline, topological physics, where currents run along edges and hinges of solid geometrical forms. Plasma crystals have geometrical configurations with surfaces called boundaries when speaking of plasma, edges and vertices. So I know it's a lot of technical stuff which I don't understand, but it struck me as well, because I've been looking at the stuff around again with megalithic sites, the stuff I did a talk on Andrew Collins, and talking about both in the sort of Göbekli Tepe and the Turkish stuff around there, but also into the Egyptian, but how they were aware of geometry, and you get these sort of sacred geometries, but where they had these there's a lot of analysis of the geometries, the maths within the building of these structures, and that was done in a very deliberate way to create frequencies or to tap into some connections with something. And of course, as I just said, so much of these megaliths have crystals within them. So again, I'm certain that these ancient civilizations had a great knowledge in ways of tapping into these energies and manipulating them. And so again, it taps back a little bit to previous talks. Hannes Alphen, another Scandinavian, in 1967 discovered or posited that the universe's vast network of plasma filaments carrying electric currents, universe is full of magnetic fields. The charging of particles in plasmas and space by electromagnetic fields in turn modifies the electromagnetic fields. Whereas once space was thought of as empty, we now know that at subatomic and quantum level, space is a jungle of plasma, a highly charged creative ecosystem, with matter in the form of particles being one of the things it creates. Alvin showed that a Birkeland current, named after the chap I mentioned at the start, Christian Birkeland, the guy who was up in Norway looking at the Aurora Borealis. So this Birkeland current, named after him, is a stream of either negatively charged particles, electrons, or positively charged particles that can travel for immense distances through space, many millions of miles, or even billions of miles at speeds not far below the speed of light, along a twisted rope, in inverted commas, not made of dense matter at all. And this rope is made entirely of the charged particles themselves and magnetic fields generated by those streams of current. Scientists call these ropes filaments. When there are several of them seen at once, they are referred to as filamentary structure. Sometimes they consist of substantial bundles of filaments, and sometimes of only two, which are literally a double helix. And as Temple makes the point, obviously the DNA within us and within all life is a double helix. So again, you got that as beloved. So bigger. Oh, sorry, I forgot the bigger in. Bigger it. Which is basically what the universe does. So that's supposed to be a double helix of DNA, but these filaments, for galactic size, going through space for billions of miles, also act in the same way. So again, you just can't get beyond the fact that everything is interconnected, but also there's this, well, yeah, the maxim as above so below, but it on a micro and macro level, everything reflects each other, and I don't think that could be a coincidence, but So galaxies can be linked by these Birkeland currents. There's one called a filament, which is known as the Sloan Great Wall, that is 1.37 billion light years long, which that's a bit mind blowing, isn't it? 1.37 billion light years long, but they can also be microscopic, and our bodies are full of them, and that's why we're alive. Since the 1970s, cell biologists insist that, I don't necessarily think all, but there have been many that insist that charged currents flow along the DNA molecules inside our bodies and are superconducting. So that means there's no resistance to the energy. So double helixes are not only carry currents, they carry information. So sort of information, a bit, I guess, using the term in the way they do with computers. So the electric universe theory, our sun has electrons streaming into its poles from galactic Birkeland currents, and protons and positive ions then burst out of the sun to form the solar wind. According to this theory, our sun is powered by streams of electric currents from a filamentary web of gigantic current streams linking all the stars in the galaxy. So I just thought then, though I saw some article in the paper trying to sort of throw cold water on it a little bit, but this idea of they call it the World Wood Web or something like that. The idea, with the fungi and
World Wood Web.
That's it, and everything being connected. That's on a different level again, but there is this concept again of everything being connected. So apparently now astronomers do accept the universe is like a cosmic web. Everything is all connected up by these mind-blowingly enormous filaments, like DNA. So you've got not only the concept of something like these enormous clouds of plasma that are between the Earth and the Moon being somehow conscious entities, but the fact of everything in the cosmos and all the stars and everything else being interconnected, and everything all consisting of this plasma, but potentially all having some sort of consciousness themselves. Filaments meet and connect at nodes in interstellar space. These are stars in intergalactic space. These are galaxies. At whatever scale, the pattern of a filamentary web keeps recurring. And within the book, there was, I think, like a picture of this cosmic web of the universe and the neural network of a human brain, and looks almost the same, identical. Both masses of filaments separated by voids and joined at intersection points called nodes. Temple mentions that Mandelbrot talked about fractals and this self-similarity of forms and different scales. So again, that's another way of saying the as above, so below concept from centuries ago. Temple thinks that this Kordylewski cloud might well be able to function as a gigantic computer brain capable of storing and processing digital information, because it's got all these electrical connections, charge and current exchanges between all these different charged particles, only centimeters apart, but over an enormous area. He says the math shows that the cloud may have a super astronomical sum total for its potential computing power, exceeding the computing power available in all human brains, and indeed all other intelligent life on Earth as well, by very many orders of magnitude. So then we get back to, going back to our bodies, and not only on the DNA level, but bacteria. 10 million bacteria are to be found on every square centimetre of our skin, but most of it's friendly, so that's good. But also bacteria forms unique clouds around our bodies, someone discovered. And these are like fingerprints or like the iris scans. So everyone has got a unique cloud of bacteria around them, sort of moving around them.
I know you have.
That's very rude, isn't it? I seem to remember, what was that? Was that character? Was it in Peanuts?
Yeah.
Was it? No, it wasn't Linus, was it?
Yeah, Linus. There was a stinky boy.
Yeah, and he has like a cloud of like flies and like everything moving around him. But we all do, apparently, in a way. Some of us more than others still, but still, yeah. And they appear to extend several feet beyond the body. In all
next
directions.
door's got one.
We can feel it over here.
It's got more than one.
But the body, the cells within our bodies, and which supposedly constitute it, are outnumbered by the biological entities, bacteria, fungi, and viruses living on and in it by 10 to 1. So, and humans emit 10 million particles per hour. But, and he's saying that there should be more study on these microbes in the clouds around us, but these particles also could be charged, so that could be we could be. So then you get into things around like the idea of the study of auras. I'm just gonna. So that's Kirlian photography, which I guess most people will have seen examples of.
DJ said you sounded like Hararu Gavaru. Hararu Gavaru.
Oh
dickhead.
God! Right, I'm going to shoot myself in the head now. Thanks, DJ.
Yeah, make your picture bigger.
All right. Well, yeah. All right. I've jumped ahead a bit.
Bigger.
It looks like.
Yeah, but it's interesting to look at.
It looks like a nice little furry creature.
Looks like a jellyfish.
Well, there's that a bit as well. But then we'll go back to that in a minute. So many researchers insist we have invisible counterpart bodies made of plasma or bioplasma that surround us and extend several feet from us. Even if microbes aren't charged, sufficient dust accompanying microbes within clouds, so we could say that we're surrounded by charged microbial clouds. Now, yeah, I mean, he talks here about, more study needs to be done, but the microbial clouds around us are charged by plasma or become part of a plasma clouds, or even generate a plasma cloud through their own charges. They can then potentially carry electric currents, electricity, negatively charged currents, or proticity, positively charged currents. With electric currents, you get magnetic fields. So we may be surrounded by these highly complex ultra-weak currents and fields. Now, this, just to go back a bit, because this is another brilliant book, which I may do something.
Yeah, don't say it out loud; you'll get bloody kicked off for that.
Oh, right, just okay. Well, they like rainbows, though, don't they? The establishment.
Honestly, that book will get you kicked off.
All right, I won't say it, but people can see it.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant. Quite a lot of people will have maybe know about it or have read it, I would imagine, in the chat anyway. But again,
careful.
I am going to go careful. I'm going
because of the older. Convids.
I'm going careful, but
if you can't talk about it, there's some bloody truth in it.
Yeah.
So keep my mouth shut.
But again, the ideas of that electrical fields that are created around us in different ways and could disrupt us because we have these charged plasma fields around us and in us, and we're electrically charged within us. Electricity flows within us, so it does seem to stand to reason. You disrupt that, you change the charge around our bodies.
And the reason this is controversial is because of, we got to go careful when we say this.
You've got to go careful.
The last time people had a lot of colds, they introduced electricity. I'm going to try and talk around the bush with this. And people got a lot of colds recently when they were potentially introducing 5 grains of sand. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
That's quite clever what she did there.
David Icke got kicked off for saying it.
He just says, no, Liz, it was a dream.
Don't say it. Yeah, Rick said we need a t-shirt with don't say it.
Believe what you're told.
Yeah.
Believe what you're told.
So whenever there's a spate of ill health, there's new electricity technology about.
Yeah.
Christ almighty.
A boot.
We are not going to be here next week, so make sure you fucking subscribe to Mark's channel, which nobody.
Everyone quickly watch everything on our channel and record it on your phone or something. Because we're gonna bloody get round to.
It's like we're trying to get kicked off.
Yeah, we're not. We're gonna wake up tomorrow. It's like, oh yeah, let's download everything before we get deleted. Oh,
the thing is, it's all like, oh, let's go on to Rumble, but Rumble is now part owned by Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel is the one that's come up with that crime before you do anything thing.
Well,
he's got an algorithm or something, Peter Thiel. That, what is it called? Pre-crime.
Yeah.
And he part owns Rumble, so we're fucked.
Yeah. So once again, a hopeful message from Liz. So that's why we're the crafty nihilist.
Yeah, I'm a nihilist. He's a
crafty. No, you're crafty and the nihilist. But yeah, I'm the less nihilistic Mark. So there you go.
Oh, I'm making him a little bit more nihilistic though, as every day comes.
So yeah. But yeah, as Temple says, research into these things is not allowed to go into what dangers might be, is not allowed to be done, though. Because although they really care about us, not apparently enough to do research into that, because there's big money and power involved with that. But yeah, Temple does mention that. So there's so many other things within this book that I think drawing on different levels from things that we've talked about and that we're interested in, as I've mentioned, like the ancient history stuff or some of it. But yeah, it comes right up to date in terms of things that have been done in our society and by people in power. So yeah, there's existence of a magnetic field associated with the action of the human heart.
Human heart.
That was in.
You're not allowed to say that.
That was in 1963.
Not allowed to say that.
So that was the first scientific detection of naturally occurring biomagnetic field in the human body. And Temple says it was painful for scientific and medical experts to accept this, as it went against the body as a machine theory. Obviously, I suppose modern day machines have got all these quantum computers now, but when they talk, then it was still body as machine in terms of like a clock or
steampunk.
Well, yeah. So again, it was like levers and just setting on a reaction and turning something. But the life doesn't work like that, And as I say, all these scientific things are proving that that's not how life works. And yeah, even machines don't even work like that now, in terms of the kind of quantum computers that they're looking to do. Now, the interesting chap that he mentions quite a bit in the book. I couldn't find a photograph of him. Not that I did an in-depth search for him, but it wouldn't be surprising in a way that he couldn't find it. A guy, interesting name, Freeman Cope, but he worked for naval intelligence a lot of his life. So he was a brilliant scientist. He came up with a lot of stuff, but because he worked for naval intelligence, And as Temple says, naval intelligence, all the different arms of the military have their own intelligence services, which sometimes work together or whatever, but they're all basically intelligence services that are not out for the general good, really. But because he did so much for naval intelligence, there's so much of this guy's research, Freeman Cope, that's not available. It's not even in sort of scientific journals and stuff. But there's a few bits at different conferences and the odd paper. As Temple said, sometimes things you're able to go back and he's found sort of old scientific papers and things, because he says sometimes like the people in power, because they not scientists themselves, like didn't realize at first maybe the importance of something until later on or something like that. But Temple was saying he sort of worked out from this, I think, one particular conference that Cope was talking at, and these articles were published from it. And he realized that this guy Cope he'd obviously been asked to examine the secret papers of Wilhelm Reich, who's another one of these interesting figures. Who probably get us thrown off or something. But
Christ.
But
it's like we're masochists.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Just as an aside, it doesn't mean anything to anyone, but there's a guy that I used to know around Bath. He now lives in America, but I don't normally go on Facebook. Just occasionally went on Facebook. But anyway, he writes novels and things. But he seems very much a sort of a wokey. But a lot of the wokies are very into Reich, I suppose, because he was a student of Freud and was seen as being like carrying the baton of Freud. So much of his stuff is about. A lot of his stuff is about sexual liberation. I suppose that's why a lot of the wokies like it, because it sort of fits in with their agenda. But obviously he is such a fascinating figure for many on the esoteric side, because of what his later studies into things that we probably can't talk about.
Don't talk about it.
Can I even say the word beginning with O-R-G? No.
Orgone energy. Oh, we're fucked.
Oh, that's it. Right.
We're fucked.
But yeah.
Bye, Rick.
Bye, Rick. It's Rick and Reich.
DJ, don't type that in there. DJ, delete that now. You can't even write that word.
Oh dear.
DJ.
Oh dear. Right. Anyway, so anyway, right.
I've removed that. No offense.
So Reich thought that the sex orgasm was a specific type of general biological phenomenon occurring in all creatures to do with an involuntary contraction and expansion of the total plasma system, resulting in an energy discharge in which orgone energy was released. He believed orgone energy could occur in the form of tiny particles, which he called bions. But, very much orgone energy, it seems like, similar in many ways to plasma. What he's talking about, this, is like an energy really that sort of pervades everything, the universe, life, and everything else. But yeah, the story probably will be familiar to many. So he had to flee Germany, obviously in the 40s. He'd released a book in Germany in 33. So as things were starting to get juicy in Germany, Mass Psychology of Fascism. So he wasn't popular with the nasties. Got to be careful again. Oh God. But Temple goes into all this stuff as well because, of course, so he's saying 1947, the persecution of Reich started in America, where Reich had gone to flee in the nasties, supposedly to the land of the free. but persecution started, and Temple was saying this was the same year as Operation Paperclip, and it was the year the CIA formed. Obviously, it came from the OSS during the war years. Alan Dulles, the if you like, the founder or the head of the CIA at the beginning, who was in this OSS. And Temple was saying in the 1930s he was employed by the front company for the nasties, IG Farben, who manufactured death gas. So Temple goes into stuff saying about Dulles and about how he knew about lots of things that the nasties were doing, and he was sort of working with them really, and obviously helped so many of them come over to the US in the paperclip. So what Temple was saying, he felt that it was nasties working with the CIA, and it was all these people became part of the establishment, if you like, in terms of the power force. And of course someone like Reich wasn't he'd already angered the nasties and run away from one time, but if you like, they sort of followed him. So he was saying that's a lot of reason for the persecution of him. But it's interesting to say that it seems like this Freeman Cope, this amazing scientist, he'd was given, it seemed like he was the one that was sort of entrusted. Probably they got all this papers off Reich when they arrested him, and then he came to a nasty end, and it was like, well, people didn't know what had happened to his papers, and the general thing put out in the mass media was, and up to this day was that he was mad, and he'd gone mad, but it seemed like they obviously did treat his writings, his research, even in those later years, seriously. The actual government did, because they were giving it to this scientist who was working for him and who was a top man in the field. And from these articles, it seemed like Cope was finding a lot in what Reich was writing that he agreed with and found evidence for. And I'm just finding. So Cope discovered strange forms of energy by suggesting that superconductivity took place along the double helix of the DNA molecule. So Cope said that the orgone accumulators, which Reich developed, he said that they worked. And he talked about earth energy, and said, and this is, as I say, top mega brain scientists working for military intelligence, he said that this may explain dowsing. If we all have particles inside us, rendering some people hypersensitive to invisible energy fields.
Oh, Pete, if Pete's listening.
Oh yeah, Pete, shout out to Pete, our friend Pete,
listening to this.
Who you'll know if you see now. How many of us was it?
Six nutters.
Six nutters going to go to Avebury.
He gave us. He made
Yes.
and gave us all dowsing rods, and we went dowsing with him the second time round as well.
Yeah, that's on the channel, isn't
Two
it?
nutters went to Glastonbury.
Yeah.
So 6 nutters went to Avebury, and then 2 nutters went to Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And it all involved dowsing rods.
Yes. So thank you again for those, Pete, and we will hopefully do more dowsing with you in Glastonbury soon. But yeah, so Cope wrote mention a few words that I don't know. So anyways, it hopefully explained within it. But a hypothesis that the long sought after magnetic monopoles are all around us and are in the form of delocalized tachyon, which are faster than light particles, clouds, which form periodic wave functions detectable by sensitive quantum mechanical processes in man. The general pattern of reported experimental observations, so he's done experimental observations, seems to suggest that delocalized clouds, wave functions of tachyon magnetoelectric monopole polymers, hang with us, Substances which are made up of large molecules, in other words, surround all solid and liquid objects, and that these are detectable by sensitive persons trained in dowsing techniques. The detection is presumably by quantum mechanical interactions with living cells. So, I thought of this as well because I think I remember. I don't know if I saw it through Ben's program or one of Ben's presentation, but obviously Ben, if you see Ben's great talk that he did with us before we got banned, it wasn't for Ben's video. Talking about skeptics, and he mentioned Chris French, who he said was a nice skeptic. That
we met him.
Yeah.
ASAP.
Yeah, I didn't. Did we actually talk to him? Or, I don't remember.
All right, we've seen him talking.
We've definitely seen him talking.
But sort of met him.
Yeah.
I thought you talked to him in the toilet. Oh, I don't know.
That doesn't sound good,
You
Liz.
talked to somebody in the toilet.
It wasn't him.
You talked to some.
It's a rumour.
Oh.
Don't believe everything you read on the toilet walls. Anyway, I can't remember where I saw it. But there was a clip. It might have been shown by Ben, but it was of a program that was on TV, which Chris French was involved with Rich Dawkins. And it was, it's one of these things that was supposed to be debunking anything remotely esoteric or spiritual. And
Gary's in.
Sorry?
Gary's in.
Hello, Gary. Good to have you. And this program, it was like disproving dowsing, and they got people that were dowsers, said they could do dowsing, and it was again one of these things where they just they make something so unnatural, and it's like, how could anything that involves some sort of connection happen? It's all bound to fail. So it was obviously, which is what they want, but I think they had all these different like tin drums or something like that, and like one of them had water in, so they got these poor people to go round with their dowsing rods, and it's like they didn't find the tin which had water in it, so
it was plastic bottles, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean
underneath. But that's because it wasn't moving.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the movement of the water.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably
dickheads.
And anyway, obviously, as we know, I mean, even when we've done dowsing with Pete, it wasn't even about. Well, there might have been water involved, but it's about energy as well. I mean, and obviously that includes with, like you say, with water, moving water, but also it's about energy. It's not just about that. But again, it's the usual thing that they come from it completely the wrong end, and they want it just to prove that they're already what they assume, what they know to be correct, that it's nonsense. But I just thought of that I mean, this Cope was, whenever he was doing his thing, he said this was, I think, maybe the 60s or 50s. But this again, it was like a really highly regarded scientist, although, as I say, a lot of his work is not in the public eye or even in the general scientific eye, because it's done for naval intelligence. But he was finding a scientific basis for things like dowsing, and as I say, he was looking at a lot of what William Reich's theories in his supposedly mad later years, and was finding resonances with them, and that he thought a lot of his things would work. Now, interesting, a link following on from Wilhelm Reich, because again, I mentioned him earlier, Nick Hayes. He's also influenced by Wilhelm Reich and has used an instrument that busts clouds.
Oh shit! I thought you were doing an idiot. We are doomed.
Doomed.
Bloody follow Mark, because we're gone by.
Yeah, and also follow Nick. Quest for the Invisibles.
Yeah, he's our friend.
So this is one of his images. I can't remember, Nick. Sorry if you do listen. If this was infrared or ultraviolet, I didn't take note of which is what. But he does absolute incredible work.
Make it bigger.
Yeah. Green Tea says, I'd love to go back in time. My great grandfather was a dowser. Guess people from all over used him from where to dig wells.
Oh, they still do.
Yeah, I think Cosmics. Didn't Cosmic say that he's on a farm? Someone relative used to do.
Yeah, somebody on the farm.
He lived on his own, still doing well into his mid-90s. That's brilliant. Yeah. Gary, glad to hear you're better. So yeah, I mean, this is an amazing. I mean, as I say, Nick does the for years, and he would go frame by frame, just hours and hours worth of footage, and often it would just be like within like 1 or 2 frames, he would just catch a glimpse of these objects which weren't visible in the normal light spectrum that we can pick up with our eyes. I mean, this looks
like it's a machine.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, it looks artificial, like an object, like you would say maybe like a UFO in terms of what people commonly think of as a UFO. It looks like a spacecraft of some sort. I mean, it looks incredible. And just, I mean, Nick does go through it on his website, but he's very technical, and he goes through diligently. You know, he talks about how when you got things like where people say, oh, it's just like an insect caught in the in the frame, in the frame, and it's that's what's creating, and he has examples of where he has had that, and he shows what that is, and he said, and then he eliminates that. So the images that he shows what he believes are real entities of some sort. He rules those things out. So as I say, he's influenced by Reich and use his devices at some points as well to try and attract these things, which he thinks is sometimes brings these things to come close. This one is more like what he calls things skyfish. Excuse me, because they do look like sort of fish-like or in some way, but again, some sort of what he thinks is plasma entities, and he has done a scientific paper with his friend and colleague. Sorry, Nick, I can't remember his name, but on orgone. Again, you can read that through Nick's website. But I wanted to include these because this is very much, I think, really, really important and shows, I think, what we're talking about. And like going into what Temple was talking about, he was talking about ball lightning, and he was saying that there's, a consciousness with sort of within the plasma, because, it seems that, when people talk about other dimensions, and obviously, you've got quantum physics talking about things like that, but just also in this plasma realm, if you like, it's in and all around us, but in the forms where we can't see it in the light spectrum, they may well be beings like when we get ball lightning that we can see in our physical world, but there may be other types of plasma objects or beings, entities, which are picked up, have been picked up by the work of. Sorry.
Keep going. You can make it quite big. It's quite good, that one.
Picked up by the work of Nick and his predecessors, GRCU in Italy. There was a Romanian researcher as well, and Trevor James Constable in America, who particularly influenced Nick on his work. But yeah, do check out Quest for the Invisibles. It does look kind of solid, DJ. Yeah, very much so. It definitely looks like an entity. And as I say, this was just in the infrared or the ultraviolet, just within frames of the photography.
But he's also got paranormal things and weird things like that.
He does. I haven't included any of that in here, but yeah, he's also had lots of paranormal experiences and captured sort of.
Yes, so go careful because it's comes into his house and does horrible things to his electronics.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I mean,
fucks up his electrics, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking as well, like Stranger Things. We've got Stranger Things. I
can't bother.
But no, I know. But I think I mentioned before in another video how I think it was the last series, and they're in the lot of the people, the kids are in the upside down, and another lot in the regular world, but they communicate through like turning a light on and on, because somehow electricity goes through the two different worlds. But like I say, this sort of electric universe idea again seems to be connected with the ideas of plasma. But also, you know, this idea of say with this invisible cloud, which could be these charged particles. So then you get into, you know, what's considered esoteric and foolish by the materialist, but, you know, auras. I wish we could find that. We had a picture taken of our auras, didn't we, once? It came out like a sort of Jimi Hendrix picture. From
yours was really nice. Mine made me look like, mine was like a fucking demon. And mine suggested that I got too much to say or something.
I can't believe that's true. Go back into the plasma. Right.
Yours.
Emerging from the plasma like one of Nick's skyfish.
Am I emerging?
Yeah.
Put me on full screen so they can see me emerging. Pick the little picture up a bit there. Am I emerging? No, I'm not.
You haven't emerged yet. You can emerge.
I'm not emerging.
You'd need to emerge.
I'm going to emerge. I'm emerging from the plasma.
You can't.
What? I don't exist.
There I am. There we are. Oh, you've pushed yourself out. How have you done that?
I fucking know.
You bloody short charged.
We're emerging and we're not. There I am. I'm emerging.
Plasma being.
Right, I get a headache. I'm get back to normal. So click the little.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I've emerged.
Yeah.
Oof.
In today, talking about paranormal.
A lot of energy.
Talking about paranormal. I don't know if people noticed my t-shirt. I've got the Overlook Hotel, and I just saw a thing. Shelley Duvall died the other day. The female star who was rather tormented by.
She was ugly, wasn't she?
Yes, rest in peace, Shelley. Anyway, but that's again the paranormal, a lot of the supernatural, the idea Temple talks about, that we have plasma bodies within these temporary physical matter bodies, atomic matter bodies, I suppose he would call it, and that, you know, again, this could be an explanation that the plasma part of us is something which will endure and the energy will pass on. And he talks about this idea where people say that the after death the body loses 21 grams, or, you know, various.
DJ was saying that earlier.
Always ahead of the game, DJ. Yeah. So
that's what Gary's just put as well.
Right.
Shelley.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. She used to live in the Texas Hill Country near me.
Not near you.
Well, no, this is Gary. Gary Robinson's putting in the chat.
Gary's going to talk for us.
Oh, brilliant. I look forward to that, Gary. That'd be fabulous. We'll try not to get banned before you get a chance to do it. Or you can always do it on my channel. Forget. Anyway, look forward to it. It'd be brilliant. But yeah, I just thought as well, because the Shining, the paranormal. But yes, our plasma bodies, again, it's these concepts of the soul and for life after death, the supernatural, ghosts. All of these things, I think, can be scientifically explained, and they make sense within this the realm of plasma. And this, just going back to this Kirlian photography, which comes out with these sort of auras in living things, which again, because basically we've all got electric current, we've all got plasma, charged particles within us. All life has, and even supposedly inanimate objects.
Shout next door.
but and you've got this idea, like with quantum, it seems to sort of overlap a little bit on the quantum physics side. When you've got this talk about quantum entanglement, where pairs of particles can seem to interact even if they're separated in space, even if they're light years apart. I don't know how you test that. How do they say, oh yeah, we'll send that particle, right, that's right, how far away is it? Oh, it's 20 light years away, right? Can it still interact? I mean, how do they do that? Anyway.
They've got very clever machines, Mark.
Yeah, but
Mark, they've got clever machines.
Yeah,
don't question it.
All right, okay, I won't question it. Anyway, I find it fascinating.
Clever machine.
But along with that, like I was saying, everything's connected, and all these things, galaxies connected by these filaments of plasma, conducting
you need to keep
energy.
Still, because you keep going in.
Sorry, I keep on going in and out of the dimensions. So yeah, also on this element where we're all connected with plasma, I think it's there can be connections again, and it could maybe also offer scientific basis for things like telepathy and even clairvoyance, where on this plasma level things can interact over great distances, and maybe, I don't know, maybe in different times as well. Funny enough, it mentions in passing in Temple that this Reichenbach talked about this odic force, and that was an inspiration for who I mentioned in my talk on the esoteric nasties in Germany, Second World War, and how they were inspired by this idea of Vril by the British author Bulwer Lytton. And he wrote this sort of science fiction novel with Vril, which Cosmic was talking about as well. And he was, I think, inspired by this idea of an odic force that Reichenbach in the 1850s talked about. But again, it's so a few different whether philosophers, theorists, spiritual, esoteric followers, whatever, call it different names, but this idea, Temple didn't mention Bergson, Henri Bergson, but I've read about him in the past. I don't look at him again, but I think he talked about a life force. But all these different concepts and the sort of orgone idea of Reich, all of these could be just different names or different ways of talking about plasma, and something which is the ground of all it is, which is the whole universe. Basically, has got it within it. So yeah, I mean, we've got electric fields around us, and which form bubbles within the normal electric field on the Earth's surface. So there's always a constant interaction of different electric and magnetic fields. So again, as I say, with Cope talking about dowsing, I think the interaction of these different energies explains a lot of esoteric ideas. Temple also mentions David Bohm, or Bohm. Bohm would be unfortunate. In fact, Bohm. He's influenced me. Funny enough, he was a scientist that was mentioned by name within this novel that influenced me, The Child in Time, which I mentioned earlier, where there's a character who is a scientist, a quantum physicist, and she talks about how science should be open to all these ideas from visionaries and psychics and poets and these different theories, contemplations of time. And the character mentions David Bohm, and he's cited by McEwan, Ian McEwan, who wrote the novel. Ian McEwan then, from what I gather, sort of went more into like a hard material science, as is the sort of the establishment view. But this particular novel, it was his first sort of full-length novel in the 80s, and there was a lot of political stuff in there as well. But that got me on the sort of lost child, but because there's a lost child within it, but it's got all these scientific but also spiritual ideas. At that time, his then partner was like a spiritual healer. I forget her name. But then after the novel, they had a like a messy divorce, and she ran off to France or something with the kids, and he had to go get them back. Anyway, it all got very messy, which possibly was why he then rejected the idea of anything spiritual. But no, David Bohm is, to me, really fascinating. Again, he might be a subject of a future talk. But again, one of these scientists I mentioned, with others that are open to all these other ideas. He did a number of talks with I can't remember his name now. The one Annie Besant found as a boy, that I can't remember his name now. But anyway, very much open to spiritual ideas and looking at on a quantum physics sort of a scientific grounding, theoretical, mathematical basis for a lot of things that were referred to as spiritual.
Nahara case.
Doesn't sound quite like I remember it, but again, I've got a book somewhere. But yeah, David Bohm, brilliant guy. But he had a theory of the implicate and explicate order. So the implicate order, well, explicate order is basically is matter, is the world around us, and our Krishnamurti, yeah, I think. Well, I probably pronounced it wrong, but yes, that's it. Thank you, Krishnamurti. Yeah, I've done a number of talks with him, like to sort of discussions. Thank you.
I didn't look it up. I knew it.
So I thought, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, sorry. So explicate order, which is, you know, if you like, physical matter, the life as we generally know it. But he said that this was sort of a manifestation from the implicate order. So I think that's, again, what I would say, you know, what I would talk about this, the ground of all that is, that I wrote about in my Lost Child book. And which again, to me, this implicate order could be something around the plasma. But Bohm as well was Temple was friends with him, sort of, I think, quite late in David Bohm's life. He had sort of a bit of a nomadic life, and he wasn't accepted by a lot of the scientific establishment because he was trying to sort of buck the trend. Bohm said the scientists don't really know what electricity and magnetism is. Talked about other famous scientists. Nobody knows what energy really is. Nobody understands quantum mechanics. So again, someone to check out. I think quite a fascinating figure. So might be a subject of another talk, but I won't go into it now. But I'll just mention this guy. Szent György, a Hungarian, apparently his name means St. George. Another one who led a resistance against the Nazis. I say he was Hungarian, so when during the Second World War, and then afterwards he fled the communists. Went to America. He laid the foundations for the electric view of humans, plants, and animals, bioenergetics, bioelectronics. Believed cancer was due to electrical and electronic malfunctions within the body.
That's going to get us kicked off.
Oh.
That's
he discovered
word you can't talk about.
Well, he discovered vitamin C, funny enough, talking about C words. But he was not liked in the US as he upset the establishment, was an anti-nasty when, you know, Temple was saying that the nasties had been brought across by Dulles, Operation Paperclip, and that actually the Charlie Chaplin character of the nasties, his personal hypnotist, Ferenc Volgysi, who was also Hungarian, carried out hypnotic experiments in, you know, concentration camps. Dulles, it gave him a new identity after the war. Was known as Frank, treated as an American, put in charge of all American security establishments' mind control operations. And he was also Hungarian, so he didn't like this other guy, so he became persecuted as well, like Reich. even though he was a brilliant scientist. But he talked about, I mentioned briefly about water before, and that's connects with these orgone, or the things that we can't mention, but is mentioned, that burst clouds. But they, I think, go in water or something.
Yeah, it's got to be moving water.
Yeah, but this St. George, water structures and living systems. Living matter seems to be a system of water and organic matter, which forms one single inseparable unit, a system, as the cogwheels do in a watch. Water is not only the mater, mother, it's also the matrix of life on Earth.
It's the blood of Earth. It's the veins and the blood.
Yeah, quite right, Liz. And biology may have been unsuccessful in understanding the most basic functions because it focused its attention only on the particulate matter, separating it from its two matrices, water and the electromagnetic field. So, I mean, this made me think, again, I was talking before about like the old megalithic sites, because a lot of them, probably most of them, are near water or above water aquifers. That's why so much around this area, West Country of England, where we've got aquifers. Andy Thomas was talking about why the majority of crop circles are in this sort of area. It's because they're over aquifers, potentially, maybe. So again, the ancient people probably, so these megaliths, stones, which themselves obviously had plasma energy, and so many of them had crystals, quartz, etc. within them, and they're near water. And again, these people knew how to manipulate, I think, these energies from water to, water through the earth to the sky, and for the humans that interacted with them. These, I think they were, they were obviously, amongst many other things, they were sort of like giant sort of battery systems in a way, or transmissions of energy.
Like Glastonbury Tor.
Yeah, Glastonbury Tor again. Fascinating book, which I don't know where blooming put it, but again, that's probably got water inside it, so that's like an aquifer as well.
And then you've got the pointy building thing on the top.
Pointy building thing in top. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, again, it's quite a common theme where Temple said so much work. He said there's a lot of work on electricity superconduction in humans has been stopped for decades. Main publishers of the work for military intelligence, so it's been kept suppressed or secret. We can all speculate various reasons why they want that knowledge and what they might have been using it for and are using it for, and why they don't want the general public to know about it. Just another little aside about so many bees. They're positively charged particles within bees, plasma within bees, if you like. They can sense the flowers which are negatively charged with those sensitive small hairs on their faces. And the pollen becomes charged, and then the charged dust is scattered in the air. So it's like a transmission of plasma. It's all like an electric universe. So I don't know, the bees have been suffering recently. So is that just due to chemicals? Is that
more people are getting bad reactions to pollen?
Yeah. Yes. Good point, Liz.
Thanks.
Good point.
Thanks.
Different charges in the pollen, maybe. Very good point.
Yeah, I do that sometimes.
Very good
I'm not
point.
just sat in the background yawning. I'm doing that as well.
That is blooming right. That is. Yeah. Right. So to say, as Cope's work suggests, we are looking at the dynamics of currents of electricity and proticity. So that's positive and negative particles within our bodies, and interface between the plasma inside us and our physical bodies, and between our plasma. Now, Temple was thinking this work could be suppressed could relate to transhumanism.
Oh.
So that's probably getting kicked off.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Suzanne Gildert, that D-Wave Bint.
Yeah, that's the name of her company, D-Wave Bint. So all of us emit light, as do all living things. And this made me think, going back again to the John Dee talk, because quite early on, he did a book which has got a title which is very difficult to read, Propedumata Aphoristica, influenced a lot by an Islamic, I guess you call him a scientist of the day, studying optics. That's what they called it. Al-Kindi. For D, all things in the universe emit rays in all directions according to their nature. These rays have different effects based on what they contact, but all things in the universe are simultaneously affecting all other things. These rays have influence not only upon the material world, but upon the soul, as in astrology. It's all very much connected with astrology, which of course D was very adept at. The universe is therefore made up of both elemental and celestial influence. So, yeah, and apparently biophotons within us, spontaneously emitted by living tissues, and this isn't visible, but emitted when electrons in organisms get energized. So it's useful as indicators of what is happening in an organism. So if the emissions go wrong, it could be a first sign that we have a serious illness. And Temple was saying this should be like a forefront of research into this ways of like early detection of illness, cancer, etc.
Stop saying this one. Sorry.
But there's only one machine in the world, and research is barely funded into this. There's apparently just a group in Netherlands, Leiden University, but so yeah, Aristotle apparently talked about pneuma, the fifth element. So again, one of these people, of an ancient philosopher, but supposing this existence of another state beyond the three states: gas, liquid, and physical matter. So again, there's sort of an ancient. This plasma might be, I think, is a proof of, or showing a basis behind so much of ancient philosophy and wisdom. Inyusin, a scientist in Russia, couldn't talk to many Westerners in the Soviet Union, but was one of the most brilliant experts in parapsychology with military application like remote viewing. And I maybe think Thomas Sheridan talked about how after the Soviet Union fell, there was a big conference in America held looking at all the research that came out of the old Soviet Union on parapsychology. And, you know, with big name people that I can't mention funding it. And he was, like Sheridan was saying, if this is all nonsense, why are all these like big, powerful people so interested in this conference, you know? And this, but you know, again, it shows how the rich and powerful, while the sort of consensus is that this stuff is all nonsense, but in actual fact, for years they've been certainly taking it very seriously. And
well, who was it that somebody said millionaires don't believe in the occult, but billionaires do?
Yeah. Indeed, I think that was it. Astrology in particular, but yeah, the occult. I think it's So this Inyusin said bioplasma appears to be concentrated in the brain and the spinal cord. At times, it may extend considerable distances from the organism, raising the possibility of telepathic and psychokinetic phenomena. This guy Inyusin knew the Curlians, who pioneered this photography. We've seen an example of in there. the many great Russian psychics. Again, I thought of Stranger Things because their later series involved scenes in Russia, with their sort of scientific experiments with the paranormal. According to the bioplasma studies of Inyushin and Sedlak, the plasma particles constituting the bioplasma in the body set up highly structured waves of excitation that serve as an energy network. The energy stored in the network form an internal biological field. Remarkable as it may seem, this biological field has a complex broadband wave structure of great stability that stores holograms. So they talk about holograms, as we conventionally talk about things to do with light. They're talking about that holograms can be stored. That could be the way of storing memories in the brain. This other scientist, Carl Pribram, 71, book Languages of the Brain, believed holographic processes operated within the human brain and were used in the storing and activation of memories in particular. So Temples then is extrapolating this to these giant 9 times the size of Earth clouds, the Kordylewski clouds, and he's supposing with they're like giant brains, basically like one big enormous neural network, all interconnected. And it said that they could have fantastically advanced holographic capabilities, not only to store massive information, but also generate images in any form, whether as waveforms, pure data, or optical images that could be seen by the eye. Clouds would readily be able to extract 3D images of the kind familiar to us and transmit them to our brains if they wish to do so. So I suppose that could be an idea of people getting visions and being connected to some external entity. But yeah, I'll probably start winding up now. But again, this idea of biophotons within the body, again, this could be all, it's a scientific basis for acupuncture, the acupuncture points, meridian lines. Obviously, there's this idea of chi, again, energy around the body. This is, again, an ancient formation, wisdom, that's talking about the same thing, basically. Again, modern science is just catching up now to all these ideas. And again, of course, acupuncture, I know now it's some little bit medical establishment, I think you can get acupuncture sometimes.
I did, didn't I? I got 6 sessions from my neck.
Yeah, so they will do it through the NHS, so that there is an acknowledgement that it does do good. Maybe they don't quite understand or want to admit why or how it helps people, but maybe some are still sort of trying to suggest it's maybe a placebo thing, but
it bloody isn't.
No, I know it isn't, but you know what I mean. Some people might be trying to justify it to themselves, but because I do remember, actually, I remember thinking about Glastonbury Symposium coming up. I think it might have been last year's, but certainly a previous Glastonbury Symposium, there was a lady there, I can't remember her name, but who was an acupuncturist, and she was talking about, I think she was talking about at one stage, she was in a sort of practice, and it was sort of whether it was connected with the NHS, but it might have been a university, but they were doing really good research and practicing helping people, and then there was one or two sort of academics or scientists, medical establishment, who I think possibly through the mainstream press as well, they sort of talk about a campaign. It's ridiculous that government money or NHS money or whatever it may be is funding this pseudo science type research, and it got shut down, what they were doing, so, and that was, I don't know how long ago that would have been, but there's this like resistance where so often there's got to be a fight, and there's often people are ostracized, or their views are just held to be ridiculous. And again, I think, you know, this is very valid, you know, because where we're like, again, going back to Ben's talk on skeptics, you know, and we've all had it over the last few years where we've been called this, that, and the other for supposedly going against science. But again, you know, reading Temple's book and the links there, these brilliant scientists over the centuries, and so much of what they're coming up with is a proof of vindication, if you like, and a very exciting, it gives added depth to things that have been in esoteric and religious and spiritual beliefs for, you know, as long as people can remember. You know, ancient wisdom has anticipated cutting edge science, you know, by centuries. So yeah, I will probably, all I'm going to say at the end, something that struck me amongst many other things, but it talks within these sort of dusty, complex plasma clouds, but also just in like crystals in general and plasma, this idea that they have voids. So there needs to be this sort of a void within this lattice work of connections. There needs to be voids between sort of connecting parts to make them work. And without the void, there can't be the charged functioning particle. I'm using the wrong words there, but it's
flashing in and out.
I'm flashing in and out. I'm going into plasma myself. But I was fascinated by this idea that the life or the existence of these crystals, they can't exist without a void, with something, a dissolution of one part then leads to, it's like as they say, it's like a summer and winter. So again, it's these concepts of life which persists at all different levels. Right, on that note, there's me. I'm double. Why am I looking like Gimli? You've made me.
I've not touched you. I'm just taking that.
I'm not that wide
because it's flashing in and out. It's doing my head in.
All right. Well, I think I'll probably leave it on that bombshell. But yeah, I hope that's been interesting to people to hear me warble on. And I haven't had a chance to follow up things in the chat, but if anyone wants to shout out a few things, our green tea, acupuncturist help you. It does seem, well, it's undoubted that it works, but I mean, there is scientific basis for it, and it just proves again we're all made up of energy, and if whatever word you want to call it, this sort of life force, I think is plasma, and it's something that is within everything, and that element, the plasma element, wouldn't die at the same time as the physical matter. So I think it makes sense. It connects up so much of this idea of the spiritual within the physical. But yeah, how are we all done? Thanks very much, Flyfish. Thank you all for listening. It's good to be back. I hope you've all been well. I know Gary's not been well, but I'm glad he's better. Yeah, follow Less Nihilistic Mark in case we get kicked off. Well, we got to download some videos yet, so I hope we get a grace for a little bit longer. But yeah, there's not really much on YouTube that you can really say these days.
No, there really isn't.
No.
And I don't trust Rumble, even though I've been promoting Rumble.
Well, like was mentioned way back, like just having your own website. I mean,
we've got our own website.
Well, there you go. Can we put videos up on that?
We can potentially.
We could potentially
I love
do that.
the way you say we.
Well, yeah. Well, you're the technical one, but I will.
Yeah, but I want to do my art. I can't be asked with technical at the moment.
She can't be asked with it.
We're just going to have to like put cat videos up or something.
Yeah. I want you to all please consider rum.
Rumble.
Do you mean? Yeah, I do. I know that's what you mean, green tea, but I am tempted to have a glass of rum now.
Well, you're not.
I'm not.
Yeah, I know, but I've been hearing more and more about Peter Thiel and his activities, and the stuff I listen to on Rumble and I promote is very dangerous. This is about as close to the mark as you can get. So I don't trust it. I mean, it's the one I don't trust second to YouTube, simply because of this Peter Thiel guy.
Well, unless we try something else like Odyssey.
Too long, but
Odyssey. A lot of people seem to use Odyssey. But I mean, I suppose a few of these they use all of them at once, but then I don't know how easy that is to do. Again,
well, you just got to pay money to StreamYard to stream it on lots of different platforms.
Right.
But Gary's going to do us a talk. He's going to send us an email.
Yes, that'll be brilliant, Gary. I look forward to that. Yeah. No, it's fascinating. Actually, interesting, Gary. When I was we've been having a few emails with Neil Peel as well, and Gary found things, old photos of people with pterodactyls, and it was absolutely fascinating. But funny enough, when I was looking at Nick Hayes' stuff, and I noticed when he was talking about the GRCU, the Italian people who did the research of like different kinds of photography, and he mentioned that they captured images of pterodactyls over Italy, and I was like, "Is there images of that? Where's an image? I need an image for Gary." But there wasn't anything. But that was just there was a few images on Nick's of other things on Nick's website, but that might be I have to try and like look into that more. I'll try. I did send Nick an email. If you're listening, Nick, we'll have to get in touch and see if we can find out more about that. But I thought that was fascinating. But I mean, I suppose again, this idea of things. Obviously, there's a talk about things working in other dimensions, but also within maybe these sort of plasma entities, and maybe that is another. Well, I think it is another explanation of what mysterious, unexplained sightings of, as you know, it could explain a lot of UFO sightings. I'm not saying all.
Yeah, definitely.
But because I mean, this ball lightning. I don't know if it's all uniform across the board that everyone, but certainly, again, up until recently, probably a majority of scientists didn't think it was a thing, and again, they thought ball lightning was something that was made up and people were imagining, or there were other explanations for it. So even something that's been proven as a natural phenomenon now.
Well, now we've got digital photography as well. We're starting to see more things, because people are like, oh, well, I've never seen the Northern Lights like that. But when you are in the Northern Lights, they're not that green. They're only that green when you look at them through a phone. Well, my phone was too old and too shit. I had to use Connor's. But when you're actually looking at the Northern Lights with your eyes, it's kind of like a white colour in it. And it's only when you put the phone up or something digital that it picks up on the actual photons that makes it shows up the real colours for what it is. People don't realise that.
But I know we've got a different memory of this, but when we were right up the top where we took that video, I did see it as green as that with my own naked eyes. So
I can't remember.
But that was right at the very top. But certainly
Shirkaness, when we were basically in Russia.
Yeah. So but certainly when we were coming sort of further down on the boat, and then there was like, so the Northern Lights, and we went out there on the deck, but then I couldn't see them with the naked eye, just like Liz said, just sort of wispy white bits. But right up north, it was really mind-blowing. But yeah, it's I mean, I don't know, it's so much. Yeah, sorry, I've just lost the plot there for a little bit. But again, all these things connect, even though it's like, I guess maybe you could say, because it's Robert Temple, he's got an interest, like I say, in Egypt and done stuff with megalithomania. But you know, it's again, so many things that I was reading in here connects up with different things that we had previous talks about, even the nasties and esotericism, and you know, certainly ancient sites. I'll say a little bit, although he didn't mention John Dee, but again, it sort of struck a chord. But yeah, this idea again of voids. Without a void, you can't have life, or you know, this charged.
Well, that's where
plasma.
Life comes from.
Yeah. So it's and again, that sort of connects to what I would sort of wrote about in my book, although I was doing it on the sort of literary sense. But you know, I was looking back at my book and I was talking about a novel by Gail Jones, Australian author, met, but Five Bells, again it's around a lost child, but this idea of a void in these people's lives, but within that it refers to pneuma, which again Aristotle, but this idea of it talks as well about there being patterns along the surface of life and it being disrupted, you know, in this case by the loss of a child, but the positive thing, yeah, as we know, it is part of life. From death you get life. From death you get life. But without the empty space for, you know, defines the words. I'm rambling now. I probably need to stop, because otherwise we're all gonna pass out, fall asleep.
All right, don't look at me. I've got nothing to do with it.
Right. Well,
I tuned out bloody hours ago.
Okay. Thanks for hanging in with us and coming back to us after all these weeks.
We're still here.
Love you all, and
follow. Mark does Twitter, but he don't do a very good job of it. But he is on now. So if we did get kicked off, we would put an update there.
Yeah, there's a crafting artist Twitter.
On Mark's.
Well, you've got Facebook. We got
but nobody goes on Facebook. The only reason I went on it was to get more people in, and I did.
I know, but that's like another connecting point with us. So, but yeah, the Less Nihilistic Mark. We will put. Well, we've already put a link, but we'll try and put another link in the comments and stuff. But one way or another, we'll keep in touch. And thank you, and have wonderful weeks. And we'll see you again soon, somewhere, somehow,
just
in the plasma void.
Shut up.